This video will talk about the NGO. So the issue is government policy and intervention for the developing in various sector issues arousing out is design and implementation. So development processes, role of the NGO, self-help group, welfare scheme for the vulnerable sections, issue related to the health, education and human resources, issue related to poverty and hunger, aspect of the governance, transparency and e-governance and implications, citizen chartership and role of the civil service in democracy, World Bank. What is NGO? World Bank defined NGO as a private that pursue activities to relieve sufferings, promote interest of the poor, protect environment, provide basic social service, undertake community development. So what is an NGO? It is a private NGO private होता है that pursue activities to relieve suffering. वो activity pursue करता है that relieve suffering, promote the interest of the poor, protect the environment, protect and provide basic services, and undertake community development. NGO are non-governmental bodies which work in the interest of the people. These are non-governmental bodies which work in the interest of the people while remaining outside the framework of the government. They are non-government, non-state actors and usually of charitable, non-profitable character. So these usually of a charitable and non-profitable character. Why need? So they enhance the government accountability by providing checks and balances. They enhance the government accountability by providing checks and balances. For example, in certain NGOs working in the health sector, they will be more aware and they will be more specialized in the kind of the service that a government is providing. For example, XYZ area, which may rural or urban, they can make government accountability for their acts. So NGOs are working in the health sector. They will be more aware and they will have a more specialized in the kind of service the government is providing in the XYZ area and which may be rural or urban. They can make the government accountable for their acts. They are in the service sector. They provide service to the citizen in the fields like health, healthcare, education. For example, Save Life Foundation. Many of them work for ensuring the basic dignity, acting as a watchdog for human rights. Many of the work as for ensuring the basic dignity means acting as a watchdog for human rights. For example, Amnesty International. They make democracy real and vibrant through discussion, debates, and opinion building. So they make democracy real, vibrant through discussion and debates and opinion building. So they help in channelizing international aid, which can be used for various development activities. They help in channelizing international aid, which can be used for various development activities. NGO fight for environmental rights, which are often neglected, and ensure environmental and climate justice. Wetland International. So NGO fight for environmental rights, which are often neglected, and ensure environmental and climate justice. For example, Wetland International. Several NGOs are instrumental in providing relief assistance during the disaster and thus minimizing impact. NGOs like Common Cause, they approve the codes on behalf of citizens to ensure their social and political right. History of NGO in India in phase 1. The first half of the 19th century is marked by the initiation of social reform movements. These movements evoked the spirit of devoting life to something or devoting life for the disadvantaged section of the society. So first half of the 19th century is marked by the initiative of social reform movement. These movements evoke the spirit of devoting life for the most disadvantaged section of the society. It recognizes the right of the untouchability, the right to obtain education, right of the women and other social aspects of the life. This gave birth to the idea of voluntary organization for the first time in the Indian history. So it gave the idea of voluntary organization for the first time in the Indian history. Phase 2. Second phase of the 19th century witnessed the unprecedented social political awakening, resulting in the blooming of the institutionalized reforms movements such as Brahmo Samaj, Arya Samaj, Ramakrishna Mission. So second half of the 19th century witnessed unprecedented social political awakening, resulting in the blooming of the institutional reform movements such as Brahmo Samaj and Arya Samaj and Ramakrishna Mission. This promoted the government to enact a Society Registration Act 1860. This prompted government to enact Society Registration Act of 1860. Phase 3. This period marks successful attempt of channelizing voluntary spirit of political action, mass mobilization for the struggle is independence. This period marks a successful attempt for channelizing voluntary spirit for political action, mass mobilization for the struggle of the independence. It influenced the formation of many of the future voluntary organizations. For example, All India Kisan Sabha. It influenced the formation of many of the voluntary organizations. For example, All India Kisan Sabha. Post-independence period, a large number of voluntary organizations have taken part in the process of nation building. Shift to a new liberal economic and political agenda facilitated the growth of a voluntary organization at a faster pace. The shift to a new political liberal agenda has led to the facilitate the growth of the organization at a faster pace. We talk about the registration of the NGO. Indian NGOs are mainly come under three segments. For example, society. Under the Society Registration Act of 1860, trust. So private first one is society registered society registration at 1860, then there is trust. So private trusts are registered under the central government under the Indian Trust of 1882. So private trusts are registered under the central government in the Indian Trust of 1882 and the public ones registered under the state obligation. And So private trusts are registered under the central government in the India Trust Act of 82, and the public ones are registered in the state legislation concerned. Then charitable organizations, charitable companies, they are they are set up according to Section 8 of Company Act of 2013. So charitable organizations set up according to the Section 8 of Companies Act 2013. How NGOs are regulated in India? There are laws regulating regarding the regulating the functioning of NGO in India. FCRA. There's a FEMA, Foreign Management Act, Foreign Exchange Management Act. FEMA, FCRA, Foreign Contribution Regulation Act. Government of India started regulating NGO by FCRA in 1976. This way, essentially to curb the political dissent during emergency era. So it was essential to curb the dissent during the emergency era, and also to curb the aim at creating instability. Also a curb and creating instability during the emergency era in Indira Gandhi regime. It prohibited electoral candidates, political party judges, or even the cartoonists from accepting foreign contributions. So it prohibits electoral candidates, political party judges, or even cartoonists from accepting the foreign donations. According to FCRA, any NGO except foreign contribution has to register with the Home Ministry, and such contribution cannot be accepted. Designated can only be accepted by designated bank. So NGO that accept foreign contribution has to register with the Home Ministry. The Home Ministry will register कराना पड़ेगा if you want to receive foreign fund, and such contribution can be accepted only by designated banks. An NGO has to report the central government any contribution within 30 days of the receipt. So NGO को report करना पड़ेगा central government को of the foreign contribution of any contribution within the 30th day of the receipt, and they need to fulfill an annual report with the Home Ministry. Annual report करना पड़ेगा Home Ministry के साथ. It must also report the amount of the foreign contribution and sources and how it was received, for what purpose, and the manner it was to be utilized. So it was also report the amount of the foreign contribution, its source it has received, and for the purpose, and the amount for it is to be utilized. In the cases of non-compliance with the provision of FCRA Act, the government can penalize the NGO. For example, the NGO don't file an annual return. The government can issue show cause notice, and subsequently cancel their license. So government can issue show cause notice and subsequently suspend their or cancel their licenses. In the last 2 years, license of around 20,000 NGOs have been cancelled by the central government after they were found in violating the provision of the FCRA Act, the FCRA Amendment Act. Registration is mandatory after the 5 years. Every 5 years, the renewal is done as the license will expire. So after every 5 years, renewal is done. Otherwise, license will expire. So registration is mandatory, and after every 5 years, renewal is done. As the license of the NGO will expire, only 50% of the fund can be used for administrative expenses, therefore allowing the government to control how a civil society expends its money. So only 50% of the fund can be used for administrative expenses, therefore allowing the government to control how a civil society spends its money. It can change the term political party. It changes the term political party to the organization of political nature to include NGO and student organization, trade union. It changes the term political parties to the organization of political nature to include NGO, student organization, trade union. Issues with the FCRA. First one is arbitrary use. Unnecessary harassment is being faced by the NGO. So unnecessary harassment is faced by NGO due to arbitrary use of the act. Licenses are not issued at times and citing the vague reason, and licenses are not issued at times citing the vague reason. NGOs like Ford Foundation, Greenpeace also been harassed in the past. NGOs like Ford Foundation and Greenpeace have also been harassed in the past. FCRA is often used to curb the policy and dissent to silence the opposition. Since renewal is required every 5 years, it leads to corruption and red tapeism. Since renewal is required every 5 years, it leads to corruption and red tapeism. 50% of the funding clause curb the administrative freedom of NGO. 50% funding clause curb the administrative freedom of NGO. Non-conformity with international regulation. India is signatory to the International Convent of the Civil and Political Right, which mandates us to provide freedom of association. It is in a non-conformity with the international regulation. For example, India is signatory to the International Convent on the Civil and Political Right, which mandates us to form association. At times, putting unnecessary restriction or over-regulation disturb the balance and essence of the spirit of the covenant that we have signed. Therefore, it gives opportunity to other country of the member nation to point finger on us. In 2015, United Nations Special Rapporteur on Rights. So in 2015, there was a United Nations Rapporteur on Human Rights to Freedom of the Peaceful Assembly and Association submits his report on the FCRA Act of 2010. It criticizes the Act and held the provisions are not in conformity with the international conventions and are of arbitrary nature. Political parties and funding. Both BJP and Congress were pulled by the Delhi High Court in 2019 for violating the FCRA by taking the fund from London-based company called Vedanta Group. So both BJP and Congress were pulled by Delhi High Court in 2019 for violating FCRA by taking fund from the London-based company called Vedanta Group. In 2016, India government amended the act to enable political parties to take fund from Indian subsidiary or foreign company. Thus, FCRA is often used for convenience of the as per the convenience of the political party. Now, FEMA. There has been certain NGOs which are registered and they are dispersed foreign funds to various associations in the country. So there are certain NGOs which are registered and they disperse foreign fund to the various associations in the country. Nearly 100 international NGOs and associations receive foreign fund through their license office and disperse them across the India. So there are certain NGOs which are registered and they disperse foreign fund to various associations within the country. Nearly 100 international NGO and associations receive foreign funds through their license office and disperse them across India. According to the FEMA Act, these NGO are regulated by Ministry of Finance. For example, international donor such as Ford Foundation, UK Kingdom, Department of International Development. So there are certain NGO which are registered and disperse their foreign fund to various associations within the country. Nearly 100 international NGOs and associations receive foreign funds through their license office and disperse them across India. According to FEMA Act, these NGOs are regulated by Ministry of Finance. For example, international donors such as Ford Foundation, UK Kingdom, Department of International Development, FCRA. FEMA should be scrapped and all NGOs should be bought under FCRA for better monitoring. So FEMA को scrap करना चाहिए and all the NGOs should be bought under the FCRA for better monitoring. Issue with the NGO: misappropriation of the fund. Money is not used for the intended purpose, but for the activities like terror financing, other banned activities. The money is used not for the intended purpose, but for the banned activities like terror financing and other banned activities. A lot of NGO funded externally to impede the development work in India. As per 2% of the GDP lost every year. 2% of the GDP is every year to the percent of the 2% of the GDP is every loss due to because of the NGO who are funded externally to stop or impede the development work. For example, Kandakulam project was targeted by a group of such organizations. Non-transparent functioning. As per CBI, out of 30 lakh NGO, only less than 3 lakh, less than 10%. Out of 30 lakh NGO, less than 3%, means less than 10% of 3 lakh file their annual financial statement. Therefore, a lot of them are running only on the paper. So, money laundering, a lot of these NGOs do not have a significant activity and such NGO can be used for money laundering purpose. Geopolitical aims. So, several developed countries like NGO had transnational actor to fulfill their political aim. So, several developed countries use NGO and another transnational actor to fulfill their political aim. For example, West Asian countries are often seen funding pro-Islamic organizations, Civil society activism. Unnecessary activism undermine the democratic institution and very essence of democracy in fulfilling the vested interest of certain organization. So, civil society activism. Unnecessary activism undermine the democratic institution and very essence of the democracy, fulfilling the vested interest of certain organization. NGO civil organization enjoy a lot of influence and power in the modern time, but their accountability is a big question. The question is that they are not accountable. They are accountable to donors or the stakeholders who are funding these organizations or the people of the citizen it is serving. So, what is the way forward? So, National Accreditation Council. It is proposed that as an autonomous and statutory body, but should not come into effect. So, it is a National Accreditation Council. It is proposed as an autonomous and statutory body, but could not come into effect. It is a high time that should bought into regulate the NGO and civil society organization in a bipartisan way, means fair way. So, it is a high time that should be bought into regulate the NGO civil society organization in a bipartisan way. Tussle between the Home Ministry and Finance Ministry as a single regulatory body should be there to avoid confusion. So, there is a tussle between Home Ministry and Finance Ministry. There should be single regulating body to avoid confusion. There should be legitimate restriction on the functioning of NGO. So, there should be legitimate restriction on the function of NGO. Judiciary can also play an important role in this regard. To critically examine the FCRA Act of 1976, how can the role of NGO can be strengthened in India for the development work relating to the protection of the environment, discuss the throwing the light of the major constraint of NGO discussed in the previous 2015.